across the Alps to invade? Did they all just let their hair grow out?
My spear and my legs.
Smart, no?
Ugh. Hannibal's plan, a daring alpine trek to surprise the Romans, was a bold but risky strategy. If it paid off, he could catch the Romans with their pants down, but he could also end up losing a ton of men and supplies in the hostile mountain conditions. Nevertheless, in 218 BC,
but there was
with
no
a fire
roads
in
back
his
then.
eyes and some
How did he do that?
vengeance in his belly, Hannibal brought his force of almost 100,000 men across the Ebro River. They spent months on the road,
There
trekking
was
through the cold,
roads.
hostile mountain conditions. And when they finally reached the other side, they said, "Hooray! We did it! We crossed the Alps." No, those were the Pyrenees. Those are the Alps.
Oh, fuck. Oh,
After
fuck.
crossing the Pyrenees, the army then had to pass through southern Gaul, a vast territory filled with tribespeople, many of whom were hostile to Hannibal's presence. His journey to the Alps was an ordeal in itself, as he was forced to fight his way through and incurred pretty hefty losses before even reaching the mountains. His plan was almost stopped in its tracks entirely, as the Roman consul Scipio, on his way to Iberia, discovered Hannibal was right on his doorstep. Suddenly, Hannibal's journey became a race, as
Oh,
he rushed
shit.
to get his massive army across the vast Rhone River before the Romans could intercept him. The crossing was chaotic, with the panicking elephants causing several men to drown. And the first combat of the war occurred when small scouting parties from each side encountered one another. When Scipio finally caught up to Hannibal's position, what he found was an empty Carthaginian camp. Hannibal had slipped through his fingers.
Where did he
The
go?
Roman consul Scipio felt the weight of the situation. Quite unbelievably, Hannibal was going to cross the Alps into Italy, and the Romans had no idea where he would emerge. For the first time, a Carthaginian force had the Roman homeland
Chat.
under threat.
I don't get it. Why didn't he just get boats and just do that? Why didn't he do that?
Scipio sent his men onto Iberia as
They
planned,
will see him.
but he himself rushed home to raise a new army so that if Hannibal survived the crossing, Scipio would be there, waiting. Would you look at that, boys? We're here, the Alps. Although it is a little later than I expected. Yeah, it's kind of chilly. We'll set up camp here and wait for spring, right? It's way too cold, right,
Right?
Hannibal? Hannibal's famous crossing of the Alps was brutal. It was already autumn, and the men suffered terribly. It was cold. Men would fall off the sides of icy cliffs. They starved. They fell off the sides of icy cliffs. Some sources say they had to eat their pack animals and would finish off dying comrades in order to take their clothes for extra warmth. And then they would fall off the sides of icy cliffs.
Oh my God.
Imagine an army of 50,000 men with all of their horses, supplies, and 37 elephants trying to navigate the most hostile mountain range in Europe. And it wasn't just nature that they were up against. Tribespeople lived in the mountains, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. A tribe approached Hannibal and said, "Hey man, geez, that's some nice armor. What is that, gold? Man, I'd really like that armor. Hey boss, they've got food as well. Shut up, be cool. Hey, why don't you let us guide you through this narrow gorge? We're not gonna kill you or nothing. Just walk right on through there. We're not gonna kill you. It's just right this way. We're not gonna kill you." Hannibal's army were forced to fight their way through the gorge as massive boulders rained down on them from above. Some clever reorganization of his line helped them survive, and they were able
Bro,
to
this sounds
fend
like the
off
worst idea on the
opportunistic
planet.
tribes. But losses from the constant attacks were heavy. As the journey continued, men who went over the sides would get stuck on the ice sheets below and had to make a grisly choice between starving to death or just getting it over with. When the deeply demoralized army reached the summit and rested for a couple days, Hannibal tried to lift their spirits with a rousing speech. "Look, men, down there! It's Rome. These plains stretching out in front of
Also,
you
how are they
are
supposed to win with
bountiful food
50,000
to
men?
eat and Romans to kill. Move, Bessie! Look, you have just climbed the walls of Rome. The hard part is over. From here on out, it's all downhill, and nobody else will die. Except for them. The rest of us here, no one dies. Starting now.
How did Hannibal not die?
Okay, let's go. Oh, for goodness sake! As it turned out, the descent was as deadly as the way up, with the cold really starting to set in. The path became even more narrow, and at one point, the men
Cloth armor.
spent 3 days in the freezing cold, repairing a collapsed road. When they finally reached the bottom, Hannibal said, "Look, guys, we did it!" Well, I thought it went really well. When Hannibal left Spain, he had about 100,000 men.
Oh my god, how many does he have?
By the time he reached the Italian plains, his numbers had dwindled to about 26,000.
Oh,
He
Jesus.
was now caught in enemy territory.
Three-quarters of the army's dead.
Or source of reinforcements. And any
Surely he could have
elephants
fought
who had
this a bit
survived
better.
To this point, were almost certainly traumatized. So what on earth was Hannibal up to? This supposed military genius had just led a starving and weakened army right into enemy territory. Any modern general who lost half their men to mountains would be immediately fired and possibly even depanced on live TV. Here's the thing. While Hannibal may not have planned on losing quite so many men, he had almost certainly expected considerable losses.
Chat, I
And
don't
he
get it.
always had a plan.
I thought Skippy was in the fucking Rome area. Why didn't he tell Rome that? Why didn't Skippy tell Rome they're on the way?
For how to replace them. Need men? Northern Italy was full of men. Big, burly Celtic men. All the men Hannibal would ever need to beat off Rome. These Celts were filled with resilience,
Celts.
having only recently been conquered by
Wait, I
Rome.
thought the Celts are like the
Hannibal
Welsh,
hoped
aren't they?
To be seen as a liberator, convince the Celts to cut ties with Rome, and instead join him in crushing Rome.
So
That
that he-
way, he could gain a source.
So
of
you're telling me Vedius won the war with Hannibal won the war with Vedius?
reinforcements and supplies right in Rome's backyard. But sir, in order to win the loyalty of the Celts, we would need to make a seriously favorable impression on them. How do we get them to like us? Kill them. One of Hannibal's first actions in Italy was to obliterate a nearby tribe who wouldn't join him. This sent a clear message to all the other tribes. It was his wrath they should fear, not Rome's. The realization that a Carthaginian army had just invaded them must have been shocking for the Romans. But when they looked at this ragtag group, broken
Actually, bro, those Alps are so
by
busted.
the Alps, they couldn't have felt very
How
intimidating.
busted are the Alps, chat?
However,
Italy is
Hannibal
uninvadable.
was now in Italy, and he
Uninvadable.
was about to embark on one of the most astonishing military campaigns in all of
That's
human
too OP.
history. The Romans may not have known it yet, but there was now a monster loose in their territory, and he was vying for Roman blood.
Okay, let's watch episode 2 real quick before the Odyssey
This
starts.
video was made possible by Incogni. Use code OVERSIMPLIFIED in the link below for an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Also, make sure to grab our Roman Consul U2s before it's too late. Don't make me mention it a third time, or I'll you know what. Hannibal's army had survived its famous crossing of the Alps, and he was now in Italy. With Hannibal's arrival, the Roman consul Scipio hit the ground running. In typical Roman fashion, he marched his army straight at the enemy, and Hannibal began
Part 2's a
preparing
banger. Ready?
for his first combat with Rome on Italian soil. Before the battle, Hannibal wanted to inspire his men, so he staged a gladiatorial death match between
What?
captured Celt prisoners, with the winner getting prizes and freedom. He then explained that the whole thing was a metaphor. A metaphor? For what? You! These warriors are you! You're trapped in Italy with no escape. Your only
Holy.
choice now
Wait,
is
he
to
is a
fight
Giga Chad.
and win. What about the dead guy? That's you if you don't win. And the prizes? That's what you stand to gain by winning. And the fact that I've soiled myself in all this excitement? No, that's not part of the metaphor.
Damn, really? What a crazy leader or what?
Hannibal also smashed in the head of a goat.
He said if they
Again,
get rank 1, they
for
get more money.
inspiration. Scipio, on the other hand, now arriving in the area, opted for the more classic route of a rousing pre-battle speech. Look at them, men. Weak, starved by the Alps, while we are the strongest military in the world. This will be easy. like 10,000 horse-sized ducks fighting a baby-sized baby.
That's a good
It'll be
speech.
like Mike Tyson in his prime, kicking a baby. A
a
tug
good
of
speech.
war between 10 sumo wrestlers and help me out here, Ralph. A baby, sir? Yes, that's it. A baby. The point is, there is absolutely no possible way we could lose a battle this easy. So, if everybody's ready, on my mark, the Battle of Ticinus was over almost as soon as it had begun, as the Romans found themselves completely outmatched
How
by
OP is
Hannibal's
Hannibal?
famed lightning-fast Numidian cavalry, a key element in Hannibal's devastating double envelopment tactics. In the chaos, Scipio was wounded. Thankfully, according to some ancient writers, his handsome 17-year-old son, Scipio the Younger, saw his father fall. Scipio the Younger supposedly saved his father, and in the process, earned himself a lot of daddy's kisses.
Bro, Scipio
The
sounds so
Romans ended up
useless.
fleeing the area, destroying the bridge behind them as they went. For a nation so overtly confident in victory, believing Hannibal to be an easy kill, the Romans found themselves running away with their tail between their legs. It
He's scaling?
was humiliating. And do you know who thought so as well? The Celts. They began flocking to Hannibal's side, just as he had hoped. Even Celtic troops fighting for Rome in the Roman camp began to reconsider. Man, I'm thinking we should try to join Hannibal. I hear you. Maybe we should bring him a gift. What do you think he'd like? Oh, I know. Hi, Hannibal. I want to join your side, and we brought
Their
you a
heads.
present. The gift? For me? Well, I hope it's Roman heads. Oh, please be Roman heads.
Oh shit.
How did you know? Running away from Hannibal was humiliating enough, but having dozens of Romans beheaded in the night, now that's embarrassing. Ticinus
Painful.
had been a relatively small battle, but the psychological impact it had early on was huge, and it was only just a taste of what Hannibal was capable of. Despite the shocking initial loss, however, Rome still didn't seem to fully understand the danger posed by the monster
They were
now
clueless.
loose in their territory. The Senate was full of excuses. It's those traitorous Celts. That's why we lost. Yeah, and it was a cavalry battle. Wait until Hannibal faces our almighty legions. And our consul was bald. Once he faces our other fully follicle consul, then he'll really pee his pants. That other
Meredith.
consul, Longus, had been in the south all this time, preparing to invade Africa. He had seen some success, even capturing Malta. But then he heard the news. Hannibal's in Italy? And I'm being ordered home? But I was gonna be the big boy. I was gonna invade Carthage and win the war. Well, you can be a big boy at home. No! Does somebody need a nap?
Aww.
No!
Oh, he wants to win your war.
And so Longus brought his army on the long journey north. When he arrived in the area to decisively neutralize Hannibal, the two consuls joined their forces together, creating a double consular army. But the two consuls weren't exactly on the same page. Having a nice rest there, old man? I'm wounded, Longus. Pathetic. You don't understand. He's more dangerous than we thought. Maybe for you. Whoops. Listen, we can't just march straight at him like we normally do. We need to train our men through the winter, and we'll try again in spring. Sorry, I don't take advice from a bowling ball. Hey, I'll kick your ass, Longus.
What does he mega throw or what?
Any day now. I'm coming. Just you wait. Oh, Scipio, you feeble old man. Scipio was apparently quite cautious after his recent encounter with Hannibal, while Longus, typically Roman, couldn't wait to give Hannibal a swirly. So who would get their way? Well, when two consuls joined their forces, it turned out the Romans had an interesting system in place.
Don't tell me he's about to
They
throw.
would each take turns being the one in charge. Consul 1 would lead one day, then Consul 2 the next. Back and forth, back and forth. As you can imagine, when the two consuls didn't agree, things didn't go so well. In this case, due to Scipio's injury, Longus probably assumed even more command than normal. Hannibal had Celtic spies in the Roman camp. He fully understood the Roman system and Longus's hot-headed nature, and he knew he could exploit it. For goodness
Bro,
sake.
ego is
What's
what
wrong,
kills
sir?
all
I'm
of them in
trying
the
to order some
past.
pizza, but I keep getting fed all these personalized
Oh,
ads
here
about
comes the
being a
ad.
hothead. I'm not a hothead, am I? No, sir. Look
Here
at
comes
this.
the ad.
Butt insurance? Who would buy butt insurance? Yeah, that sounds really stupid. Sir, it seems like a lot of data brokers have collected data on you. They could sell that data to Hannibal. What? But don't
Here
worry,
comes the ads.
because you can get rid of that data with today's wonderful sponsor, Incogni. Hooray! I've been getting at you for some time to protect your personal data online. But you're a nimwit, aren't you? You didn't do it, did you? Typical. And now would you look at that? Tons of data brokers have collected a heck of a lot of your personal
Overconfidence is
data
a slow
and
killer.
might sell it to
Yeah, it
third
is.
parties like advertisers or insurance companies.
But
without
it's
you
the same as
even
when you're
knowing.
hungry.
Ever
Your
wonder where
eyes are
Sally
bigger
from
than your
Butt
belly.
Insurance company got your name, number, address, social security number, and favorite color from? Probably a dirty data broker. We could painstakingly contact the hundreds of brokers that have your data and politely ask them to delete it. That process would only take the average human about 3,000 years. And that's why you need Incogni. I was shocked to find how many data brokers Incogni had tracked, potentially selling my data. But all I
Yeah,
had to
we'll
do
watch the
was
ad,
create an
chat. We'll watch
Incogni
the ad.
account, give them permission
We'll watch
to
the
work
ad.
on my behalf. Then sit back and let them do all the hard
Subscribe,
work
the
for me.
deal.
And since these data brokers don't stop,
Is this really where you want to spend the rest of your life?
You know I don't.
This is our only ticket out of here.
Team has destroyed a turret.
Run.
Alien Romulus. Only in cinemas August 15.
Never letting go. I know I
Break through 5 types of tough pain with Panadol Extra. Extra strength for tough pain.
So I get to trial a great network free for 7 days. There's no catch.
Well, you do have to be Jason Donovan's flatmate.
Ciao. Just finished redecorating. What do you think? You want to try it on?
Really?
No, there's no catch. Just sign up with an eSIM in the MyOptus app. So do you want to give it a go?
Yes.
before dawn. Hey, Romans! Wakey, wakey! What the? What's going on? Hey, Longus, your butt smells like a butt. It does not! Scipio, awaken the troops. Longus, these playground insults
Wait, is he
are
gonna
clearly meant
bait
to
them
lure
into
you out.
waking up?
Well, it's working.
And then,
Send out
like,
the
make them
troops.
tired?
Longus, it's clearly a trap, and I'm falling for it. Send out the troops. Hey, guys, wake up. You're heading out for battle. What? But we haven't had breakfast. We're skipping breakfast! I don't think you can do that. As the Romans hurried out of camp, the Numidians began luring them back to the Carthaginian camp, where these gentle angels were just awakening from their sleep.
Jesus, they rolled
Eat up,
them.
boys. We're having pancakes. While the Carthaginians were enjoying their hearty breakfast, the starving Romans were still on their way. Hurry up! We have to catch those Numidians. Hey, why have you stopped marching? Longus, there's a freezing river in front of us. Well, get your gluteus maximus in the water! All right, boys, time to lather up. This oil will insulate you from the
Oil
cold.
up!
It also smells like lavender. There's the Carthaginian camp. Get ready to fight, men. Sir, I think the water from the river is beginning to ice over. I can't move. Oh, I'm sorry. You thought war would be fun? Sitting around a nice hot campfire playing Truth or Dare with your friends? Welcome to the real world! Truth, who do you like? Sharon.
Ew.
Hey, look, guys, the Romans are here. Having perfectly orchestrated events so that his enemy was cold, tired, and hungry, while his men were well rested and covered in oil.
True, you
When
gotta
the
oil
two
up.
sides engaged one another, the Romans were in no condition to fight. And the cherry on top, The previous night, Hannibal had sent out an elite force of men led by his brother to go and hide behind a bush. They suddenly sprung out, encircling the exhausted Romans, who were then cut to pieces. Once again, Hannibal's superior
Actual
cavalry
faker.
and double envelopment tactics had flummoxed the Romans. But the key word at Trebia was control. Hannibal used his intel on the enemy and the environment of the battlefield to carefully control the conditions of battle, creating lots of little advantages for himself that paved the way to success. And concealing troops for an ambush.
All roads lead to Hannibal.
These things are what make Hannibal the genius he's remembered as today. As for Longus, he managed to escape the battlefield with a small number of troops. Disgraced, he didn't want the Senate to find out what had happened, and he began obscuring communications back to Rome. Longus, where have you been? We've been looking for you. Nowhere in particular. Longus, 30,000 men are missing. Do you know where they are? They're taking a bath. 30,000 men? All in a bath? Yes. Longus, what's under that rug? Aurora Borealis? Aurora Borealis? Oh, well, that's my consulship over. Good luck with Hannibal. Bye. Trebia had been a disaster for the Romans. And as even more Celts began flocking to Hannibal, Rome largely lost its control over Cisalpine Gaul. In Rome, complacency turned to alarm. Hannibal had outwitted them on their own soil and inflicted a costly defeat.
Shut up.
But with that, Scipio and Longus's terms as consul were over. They were replaced with two new consuls, Servilius and Flaminius.
Flaminius. That's a cool name.
Begun to realize the trouble they were in and the genius Hannibal had shown in invading Italy. The Romans had expected to be the ones controlling this war.
Chat, question.
Remember,
Where's the Carthaginian fucking backup at?
they thought they were going to invade
Where's the other
Carthage.
army?
Now their plans lay in ruins, and they were levying 11 new legions to deal with the threat. Hannibal had
If Rome full sent it into Carthagena, is it 1-for-1? They just take each other's land?
completely redefined the war. But Hannibal had a little problem of his own. Things had gone well so far, but the Celts were notoriously fickle, and Hannibal needed to ensure he maintained their alliance and his base of support in Italy. Any Celts he captured fighting for Rome, he treated extremely well and allowed them to return to their homes. But the longer he hung around in their territory, eating all their food and leaving beard trimmings in their sinks, the more resentful they may become. They wanted to go south and plunder some Roman booty, and Hannibal also hoped to sway Rome's other Italian allies in the south to his side. So from here, the path was clear. Hannibal had to move south. Just one problem. There were two main routes Hannibal could take to move south.
The Alpinis!
And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly where the two new Roman consuls had taken fortified positions. If Hannibal tried to move on them, he'd be fighting from a disadvantaged position and could be bottled in. There is a third option. Ooh, tell me. We could move through this vast impassable marshland flooded with dirty, stinky, disease-infested water that at times would come up to our necks. But there's no way we would attempt that,
Oh
right?
my god.
That would be crazy, right?
There's no way he does that.
Hannibal's 4-day trek across the Arno marshlands was hell on earth. Almost as crazy as when he crossed the Alps. Imagine 3 full days unable to sit or lie down because there's nowhere to sit or lie down. Meaning 4 full days without sleep, slugging through heavy mud. You contract cholera, your foot falls off, and Jim Bob directly in front of you won't stop pooping in your path. In fact, everybody's pooping in your path. Some delirious, sleepless men would see clumps of mud and say, man, I could just sink into that. And then they would. When pack animals died, it gave nearby men a chance to rest, but only for a few moments before they were whipped back into line. Even Hannibal himself couldn't escape the torture of it. Hey Hannibal, if we see a Starbucks, can we stop? I need to take a leak. What? Jeez, Hannibal. Looks like you picked up a nasty eye infection. Normally for this sort of thing, we just wash it out with some clean water. But as you can see, water everywhere, but it's full of Jim Bob's poop. No worries, Doc. I'll just take care of it myself.
What?
That'll be $3,000. When the now possibly one-eyed Hannibal and his army emerged from the swamp,
This guy is
they
a
were
psychopath.
shattered. But he had just managed to slip 50,000 men right past the Romans into rich Etrurian lands, where he could replenish his supplies, and his Celt allies could go crazy, securing Roman loot and booty. As fields and villages went up in flames, one Roman consul couldn't help but notice the hot-headed Flaminius.
This is what Dom would be like in the olden days if it came to like, if hate watching turned into like hate invading, this would be Dom.
Yes, feeling it was his responsibility to protect these lands, rather than waiting for his co-consul to come join him.
He's fucking locked in.
Immediately left to go chase Hannibal.
Absolutely locked in. The generational rents turn into generational historical general leadership.
What the Romans called a new man. He came from the lower plebeian classes of Roman society, and as a result, he reportedly had kind of a screw-you attitude to the establishment, and a big old arrogant chip on his shoulder. Picture Sid Vicious wearing a toga. That's Flaminius. And Hannibal, thanks to his spies, knew everything. Just as with Longus, Hannibal knew Flaminius was just the kind of man he could lure into a trap. Hannibal led Flaminius to the entrance of a narrow pass along the north shore of Lake Trasimene. Flaminius watched as Hannibal's army entered the pass. I've done it. I've spotted the enemy. Sir? That big follow us sign seems kind of like they're trying to lure you in. Yes, Gareth, and I'm taking the bait.
Oh
Sir,
my
this
god,
really
they get
seems
baited
like a
so
trap.
easy.
Yes, Gareth, and I'm falling for it. Daylight was fading, so for now, the Romans set up camp. The two armies encamped across the lake from one another, and night fell over the two camps. In the morning, Flaminius would catch up to Hannibal, and he would be the hero of Rome. For
Anything
now,
timer?
the Romans got nice and comfy in their beds.
Yeah, there you go. Fixed.
Good night, Flaminius. Good night, Rome.
Are they gonna invade them while they're asleep?
Hannibal. During the night, Hannibal ordered total stealth. As tens of thousands of troops scaled the wooded hills above the pass.
There's no way they didn't have spies in the woods or some shit.
Completely undetected by
Oh
Rome's
my
scouts.
god. How? How do you get tens of thousands of men around scouts?
Let's go, girls. Flaminius took off across the lake shore.
Oh, and
to
they
try to
waited!
catch Hannibal. As he
Oh
did,
my god.
even the weather seemed to be on Hannibal's side. A thick fog rose from the surface of the lake.
I thought they would have got them while they're
obscuring
sleeping.
visibility. Look at this! This is perfect! The mist will obscure our approach. Hannibal will never see me coming. Sir? Why does it sound like 50,000 Carthaginians are charging down the hill towards us? You mean 50,000 Carthaginians are charging right into my trap? The Romans found themselves completely hemmed in on all sides.
Jesus.
With zero visibility in the fog. The fighting was terrifying and chaotic. Troops were pushed into the lake in their heavy armor, where they were either cut down or drowned. And Flaminius, who likely stood out like a sore thumb in his consul attire, caught the attention of one Celt warrior, with his head possibly swirling with thoughts of how the Romans had decimated his homeland. According to the ancient writers, this Celt took his chance.
No shot. No way did that happen! You're lying!
In the 3-hour-long massacre, 15,000 Romans were killed, and an equal number captured. An entire army completely wiped out.
They lost 2,000 men. And Rome lost 30k.
Along with their consul. During the battle, the Roman vanguard had managed to break through at the front and climbed the hill above the fog. When the mist cleared, what they saw was a blood-red lake and a sea of
Really?
Roman bodies. Worse yet, when the other consuls sent cavalry to try to aid Flaminius's doomed legions, they too were caught and defeated. A double
How broken is
disaster.
Hannibal? Oh my god.
Rome went into a frenzy. For the second time, Hannibal had completely decimated an entire Roman army. Romans were dying by the tens of thousands. Common citizens began flocking to the city for safety. Women waited by the city gates in tears, hoping to hear news of loved ones. This one man, having just led his battered army across the Alps the previous year, now stood less than 100 miles from Rome. To this point, he had been a problem. Now, Hannibal was a crisis. And in a crisis, Rome took desperate measures. They actually had a system in place when dealing with an emergency of this magnitude. They would forgo their two-console power-sharing system and instead temporarily give one man near total power and authority to be as decisive as he needed and hopefully salvage the situation. This all-powerful position in Rome's government had a name: dictator. It's actually where we get the word. But unlike modern dictators, Roman ones didn't score perfect rounds of golf or ride bears through the Siberian tundra. They held their power for just 6 months before they were required to give it up. And in Rome's hour of need,
his name was
the
Dictator.
man chosen to be dictator in 217 BC, one of the most highly esteemed members of the Roman Senate, Fabius Maximus. So how would Fabius, as dictator, confront
Oh no, his name was
Hannibal?
Fabius Maximus.
Well, Fabius understood that marching all of Rome's young men straight into a one-man meat grinder was bleeding Rome dry. Hannibal was clearly too dangerous to face head-on in battle. However, he was also stuck in their territory with dwindling manpower and forced to live off the land. It wasn't a sustainable position to be in long-term, and he could only remain there for so long.
Mr.
So,
Beast
if
Burger.
Rome avoided battle with Hannibal to prevent any more crippling losses, and instead simply maneuvered around him, blocking supplies and taking out smaller contingents where possible, Hannibal would gradually become weaker, while they would gradually become stronger. And so Fabius presented his new idea to the Roman Senate. Okay guys, I have an idea. See if you can follow me.
He's playing a macro game.
Instead of fighting Hannibal, when he approaches, we run away. Fabius's strategy couldn't have been any less Roman. Romans were meant to march headfirst into battle, not run away from it. It seemed cowardly, and Fabius was extremely unpopular. At this point, Hannibal was continuing south. He had to stay on the move to keep his army fed, and he was still aiming to undermine Rome's alliances in the south. As he went, in a calculated display of aggression, he devastated the Roman countryside and killed many Romans, all in plain sight of Fabius and his army. We're just gonna stand here? Yes. Are you a coward? No. But Fabius, that's my farm. Well, MacDonald, thank you for your sacrifice. You're a hero now. Think of the stories you
What is he doing? Just scaling or what?
Old MacDonald had a farm. Shut up. But you know who else hated Fabius's strategy? Hannibal. He understood the danger he was in. Turning Rome's allies against her required Hannibal to keep smashing the Romans in battle. He couldn't do that if Fabius wouldn't fight him. Multiple times, Hannibal tried to goad Fabius into a fight, but Fabius wouldn't bite. Failing that, he tried to turn Rome against Fabius. According to the writer Livy, he burned down all the farms he could, but any farm he learned was owned by Fabius himself. He left well alone. Hey, Fabius, why isn't he burning down your farm?
Ooh, that's
You got
mega
some
smart.
sort of a secret deal?
Holy fuck, that's smart.
Of course not.
Burn my farm too, please!
So the troops hate him.
My farm too, please!
Well, you gotta admit, he's a genius. Hannibal's problem, however, was that he had to stay on the move to keep supplying his army from the local lands. At one point, he entered Campania, one of the richest regions of Italy, great for resupplying, and great for showing up Fabius in front of Rome's South Italian allies. But he was caught in a valley, and Fabius quickly moved to block his escapes. Haha! We've got him! After he's used up all the valley's supplies, he'll starve. Sir? What are all those lights leaving the valley? Is he trying to escape? Lights in plain view. Well, that's a trap if I've ever seen one.
And we're falling for it!
Suspecting a trap, Fabius refused to budge. But other Romans in the valley rushed to confront Hannibal, only to find the Carthaginian army was actually just a herd of oxen with torches tied to their heads. They then found themselves caught in an ambush. With the Romans distracted, Hannibal's army was able to slip away.
Bro, this
into the
guy
night
is not balanced.
unopposed. Classic Hannibal. For all his inaction, the dissatisfied Romans mockingly dubbed him Fabius the Delayer. But the thing is, Fabius's strategy was probably the best thing he could have done. He was right that constant encounters with Hannibal were bleeding Rome dry, and the time he took allowed Rome some breathing room to recover their forces when they desperately needed to, while putting Hannibal into an increasingly more difficult position.
Why are you turning that into my name?
View Fabius's strategy as generally a good idea. To this day, the act of not engaging an enemy, but instead gradually wearing them down, is still referred to as the Fabian strategy. But when Fabius's term finally came to an end, the Senate couldn't have been happier. It was time to start fighting again. However, they probably had a little chat about how they were going to go about it. See, Hannibal's tactics up until now had been very sneaky. Or, if you're a Roman, you might say dishonorable. I'm sick of it. Every time we try to take this guy down, we march straight at him. But then, oh no, Hannibal's hiding in a bush. Hannibal's got 30,000 men up a
Maybe if
tree.
they call the bait, it's good.
I'm not convinced my wife isn't just Hannibal wearing a disguise.
What?
Look, this time, we obviously have to switch something up. Now granted, we're Roman, so we're gonna march straight at him without thinking. That can't be helped. It's in our blood. But I have a proposition. This time, when we march straight at him, we do it with a massive army. I'm talking like
that's smart.
80,000 men. It won't matter what kind of shenanigans he pulls. He can hide in all the bushes he wants. There's
Genius.
no way
Yeah,
he
just
can
rush.
possibly beat off 80,000 men.
Run it down.
You know what I mean? And so it was. With 2 new consuls,
That was funny.
Rome put together a massive army, the biggest Rome had ever fielded, to put Hannibal away once and for all. To
Just
gather
full rush?
the men required, 2/3 of them ended up being completely inexperienced. But how much experience does it take to be expendable war fodder? As this massive army set out in the summer of 216 BC, the Romans knew they needed to win this battle. Just one victory over Hannibal would likely be enough to end his entire campaign. And this time, their overwhelming manpower gave them confidence. They could do it. Hannibal had taken position at the town of Cannae, where he had captured an important Roman supply depot. With Fabius gone, Hannibal knew a battle was likely coming, and he was eager to fight it on his terms. But when his men looked out at the Roman camp, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. That army's huge. There's no way we can possibly beat off all these men.